we're all part of this ecosystem, every single one of us. And in order to protect it, we have to realize that we're just a part. And if we are superior, then our role is to be the stewards, not the dictators. Our role is to protect more than anything else if we have that power. Um, so I think, it's really important to let kids know or to find out on their own who is a friend and what is food.
Welcome to the Better Life for Animals podcast, where we amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. Through powerful stories and expert insights, we shine a light on the efforts to rescue, protect, and advocate for animals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Every follower helps us reach more people and support animal sanctuaries. Enjoy the conversation.
Miyoko Schinner is an award-winning chef, author, entrepreneur, and activist for animals and food systems. Named a game changer by Food and Wine and featured on the Forbes 50 over 50 list, she is the founder and former CEO of Miyoko's Creamery, a company with products distributed in more than 20,000 stores in North America, and is often credited with having helped to create a new category of food. Schinner is also the founder of Rancho Compasión, a nonprofit farmed animal sanctuary located in Northern California that is home to more than 100 animals. Miyoko, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for
Hi.
having me.
Oh, my pleasure. I am a huge fan and follower of yours. And there are so many topics that I thought we could cover today, but I thought we would start if I would ask if you could share how Rancho Compasión came to be.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I'd be delighted to do that because this is our 10th year.
Oh,
So this is our,
congratulations.
yeah, it's our big 10th year anniversary, and we're having a big gala to celebrate that in November. But really, the sanctuary was not intentional. I moved out to the countryside, not far from where I've been living in suburbia, and I had a barn, and another sanctuary had a couple of goats that needed a home, and they called me up and said, "Hey, can you house these two little baby goats that we found that were wandering around?" And so these goats showed up, and Rufus and Reggie, and they were as cute as could be. They were small. They were about the size of my dogs. I have two dogs. I have a German Shepherd and a cattle dog mix, and so they were somewhere around that size, maybe 50 pounds or so. And I discovered that goats are like dogs with horns. And they follow you around. You can take them on a hike. They don't stray. They don't run off chasing other animals. And I just absolutely fell in love with them. And then about a month later, a friend of mine called me and said, this man I know died, and he had three pot-bellied pigs, and they need a home. So the three little pigs arrived. And next thing you knew, it was like a sheep and a goat couple, and it was just all downhill from there, or uphill from there. So we ended up forming a 501(c)(3, and for the first few years, it was just kind of me, taking care of the animals, really no direction whatsoever. Just, animals just kept arriving and kept providing a home for them. And over time, we started adding staff. And right now, we are in our 10th year as not only a sanctuary for animals, but we call ourselves a sanctuary for all because we started an education program. We're actually trying to find a new word instead of education about 2, 3 years ago. And, a lot of people do what's called humane education, where they talk about animal agriculture to students in high school, college, etc. We don't use that term. We call it the Food and Friends program because we take kids ages 5 on up and we connect them with our animal ambassadors, whom they meet as individuals and they form relationships with them. Then we put in a big organic vegetable garden and they go to the garden and they learn about the food system by planting, harvesting, cooking the vegetables, etc. And we have three concrete programs. We have a summer camp, an after-school program, and field trips. In fact, there's a field trip going on right now. And we work with all these different schools that, let's say, have diverse kids that have different needs. Some are they have physical needs. emotional needs, at-risk youth, neurodivergent, all of that. And this is a sanctuary for all of them because these kids that have their own challenges come here and they find not only peace, but they find that they can help the animals, that they have something to give to the animals. And that is very, very empowering because the reason so many people suffer is because they feel helpless. They feel like they need help. They have nothing to offer the world. And one of the most valuable things we can do to give people is the gift of empowerment, to give them something that lets them realize that they also have something to give. And when people can give, they become more powerful. So that's our program today is yes, we rescue animals, but we also provide sanctuary for people as well. So anyway, that's Rancho Compasión, and we're out in beautiful West Marin, just south of San Francisco, just south of Sonoma County and north of San Francisco. So we are actually the closest sanctuary to this urban Bay Area.
Beautiful. I love how you incorporate food in with the animals, giving people a opportunity to, we don't want to eat that. Let's try this.
Yes.
And I love also that you're incorporating people because it's people that need to be empowered to make a better choice.
Well, it's the people that ultimately have to change if we want to protect animals.
Right.
I mean, we can try legislation, all of that stuff's going to take a long time. But if we can reach young people, kids, before they're hardened, while they're still developing, then I think that's really, really powerful. I mean, kids are born naturally, there's that old adage about when a toddler sees a rabbit, does she want to hug the rabbit or eat the rabbit? And I think, naturally we have a sort of a compassion. We see other animals as being cute. I mean, I have grandkids and they're just, first time they saw the sheep or whatever, they just want to run up and hug them.
Yeah.
They're not seeing them as a threat or they're not seeing them as what is that? They see them as cute little, lambs or whatever. But we wean that out of them as they get older. And we disconnect them from other animals to tell them that animals are food, that they are subservient, they are, our subjects, and we can do whatever we want to them. And we create that sort of I hate to say it, it's really prevalent today where we live in a world that's really full of hatred. And we're sort of nurturing hatred and this this supremacist viewpoint. And not just white supremacy, but just, human supremacy over everybody else, over everything else on the planet, which is why the new administration is also ignoring climate change and all of that. It's that we are superior, and we have to realize from the time they're kids that on we're all part of this ecosystem, every single one of us. And in order to protect it, we have to realize that we're just a part. And if we are superior, then our role is to be the stewards, not the dictators. Our role is to protect more than anything else if we have that power. Um, so I think, it's really important to let kids know or to find out on their own who is a friend and what is food. And that's why we put in the garden program as well.
I love that. So you're an experienced sanctuary owner now, Miyoko. Can you share with our audience some of your biggest surprises or challenges, and what have you learned in these 10 years?
Well, I mean, I have to admit, when I first started, I still was of the ilk that, sheep are sheep, goats are goats, pigs are pigs, and, pigs are smarter than all the other animals. And, you hear all this stuff. And then you realize that just like humans, all sheep are different, all goats are different, all pigs are different. And when you keep them together, we do not separate the species, we let them all live together. Sometimes they prefer an animal of another species. It's very interesting. For the most part, they hang out with their own species, but we have some really interesting relationships. We have a goose that has decided that he is the royal guardsman for a cow, Angel. And he spends much of his time just walking around Angel, hanging out with her, making sure that no harm comes to her. We have a large pig that is friends with two donkeys. We had a sheep and a goat couple, Benny and June, that were inseparable. And so, we have right now a goat who hangs out with a calf that was rescued. The two of them are, they're probably better friends than, the goat is with the other goats, or the calf is with the other cows. So we have lots of these relationships that's because we're letting them be individuals rather than say, putting them in a certain class. Um, People say that pigs are smarter than all the other animals. It's not true. They're all really smart. If you're equating them with a human type of intelligence, not human level, but a human type, then maybe, pigs are sort of like dogs in that respect. But I can tell you, they're all incredibly smart, and I've seen goats do incredible things. I had two goats literally save my life one time. The cows are intelligent. They're all intelligent. So that's something that I think even I was guilty of, was sort of lumping them all into these classes. Um, the other thing that surprised me has to do with the kids and food, because I think we live in an age where people think that, there's a kids menu at every restaurant and kids only eat certain foods. And during our summer camp, we don't have vegan kids in our summer camp. We might have had two or three, but most of the kids are just regular kids, omnivores. And we've had parents that come and say, I just want you to know my kid's very picky about his food and he only eats nuggets and pizza, or, macaroni and cheese or whatever. I don't know how he's going to like the vegan food. And I was the lunch lady. I was making all the meals. And I can't tell you, the kids are lining up for seconds and thirds for salad and tofu and all this stuff. And the parents are blown away. The parents are like, I don't know what you're feeding them. My kids come home raving about the food. So, that's another thing that really I was really worried about, was would the kids eat the food, but they absolutely love it. And food just has to taste good, and kids need to be exposed. We all need to be exposed. We need to widen our perception of animals and food.
I think it's probably the parents who are afraid to try it, and
Yes.
the kids had never tried it. I've seen a video with a turkey on your property. His name is Fred Astaire. And
Yes.
I've seen him walking up the ramp into the kitchen, mingling with the would-be chefs. And I think to myself, I want to talk about that now, October 1st, because Thanksgiving is right around the corner. And I wish people would not have turkey for Thanksgiving. And if they could meet someone like Fred Astaire, I know they wouldn't ever touch turkey again.
Yeah, if Fred, you could have Fred to your
Yeah.
Thanksgiving event.
Wouldn't that be lovely? Yeah, there's a thought.
Yeah.
Adopt a turkey and invite him as a guest to your Thanksgiving dinner. I love it.
They love to parade around. Fred is our ambassador. So when we have visitors, the first person that comes out of the barn and greets all the guests is Fred. Fred, and he hangs out. I remember uh, there was a conference here. It was like a business conference. We sometimes rent out the venue, and there were about 250 people here. And Fred was just, they were all listening to speakers, and Fred was just walking up, up and down the auditorium, just saying hello to everyone. People absolutely adore him. He is actually the star of a National Geographic video on YouTube, on the Nat Geo channel. If you just Google Fred Turkey Nat Geo, he'll show up. So they actually did a video of him. He's so charming. He's so debonair, and he does a
Yes,
little
yes,
tap
that's a
dance,
great
which is
word.
why, yes,
Just
he's
like Fred
very,
Astaire.
yes, he is debonair.
Yes. Well, as I'm listening, I'm hearing you say sometimes we rent out our banquet room, and I'm imagining that you have all sorts of ways. I know you offer a cooking class, ways to bring funds to your sanctuary, and Yeah, I'm sure you're, on the top as far as the most successful, but there's a lot of sanctuaries out there, as you well know, who are trying to make a go of it and trying to take care of their animals. Do you have any best practices for those, or, what not to do's, just cautionary advice if, we can perhaps share with our audience?
Yeah, I think a lot of people they want to start rescuing animals. A lot of people tell me this,
Yeah.
and it is very, very hard.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, we took in about 8 animals from a micro sanctuary. Unfortunately, the woman was wonderful, but she had to file bankruptcy and sell her house in a hurry. And within 2 weeks, she had to rehome, some llamas and goats and some other animals, and we took them in. So the thing that you have to keep in mind is that animals are for life, the life of your sanctuary. It's not like a little business where you're going to make trinkets and sell them on Etsy.
Right.
If you start a sanctuary, you have to be committed for the length of your and the animal that could live the longest. A cow can live 20, 25 years. So it doesn't mean they will. Unfortunately, we lost a steer just a few months ago because he was bred for size. He was Black Angus, and he couldn't make it. He was so heavy that he wasn't fat, but he was so ginormous. He was almost 3,000 pounds. His bones just couldn't keep up with him, and he became lame. And he was only 8 or 9. So just because they can live to 2025 doesn't mean they will. But that's the commitment. And unfortunately, they're very, very expensive. And we are struggling all the time to raise enough money to pay for uh, the animal care, as you know, and that involves staff and feed and veterinary costs. Veterinary costs can be incredibly high. One thing that you have to think about is, a chicken, let's say something happens to a bird, the vet bill could be $1,500. And some people will say, well, it's just a chicken. I don't want to spend $1,500. We decided a long time ago that we're not going to value the lives of different species differently.
Mm.
So just because a chicken is just a chicken in the sense that it's small doesn't mean that his or her life is less valuable than the life of a goat or a sheep. Where you might consider it is because it is a small body, sometimes a surgery that is required may not have a very good chance of survival. In which case we might, whereas it might be easier for a goat, for example, because the body size is bigger. So there's things like that, but we value all life equally. And so we spend tens of thousands of dollars a year on just veterinary care alone. And then there's all the feed, the housing. We need staff to take care of them. It's very hard just to depend on volunteers. So, if you're going to get 1 or 2 goats or something like that, maybe that's okay. But if you really are trying to develop a full-on sanctuary model, really make sure you have figured out where that funding is coming from and who's going to take care of them. Let's say you're sick. Are you ever
Mhm.
going to be able to take a vacation? These are all the considerations because these are living beings. These are not things that you're making. So think twice and think about what is the purpose of that sanctuary because we cannot rescue ourselves out of animal agriculture. And so that's why we started the education program because we figured the animals are best if they can be the ambassadors to a greater kingdom of animals. And if we put our effort into actually working with children, we can impact change long term. So, that's why we did that. We made that sort of shift rather than just being a rescue. Last year we had 625 kids come through our program. And this year we're hoping to reach more. And I think that's how we make change fundamentally. And the kids, they figure things out on their own. We had a boy, I like to share this story. He was playing with a chicken one day and he said, "Wait, when my mom gives me fried chicken, is that who I'm eating?" And he had made that connection. He now called the chicken who instead of what.
Mm.
So, kids at a very young age will naturally understand if they're given that opportunity.
I have one of my youngest grandson is 3, and he's been asking his mother now, like the waffles, is this an animal? Is this an animal? Everything now is like, is this an animal? My daughter says, did you put him up to this? So you're right. They figure this out very early.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad you brought up, how it can be, a very arduous life, and you really have to think it through. And I'm sure you run into burnout and, fatigue in sanctuaries. And I'm wondering, how do you care for your own well-being, and how do you think about the people on your team? Because this can just be full on.
It really is full on, Cheryl. I'm not day to day anymore. I'm the chairman of the board, and so I work on things like fundraising, development, long-term strategy, et cetera. But we have an amazing director who just gives her heart and soul, and we have 3 other staff members plus volunteers who are boots on the ground every single day, making things happen. And it is definitely a lot of hard work. I have to tell the sanctuary director, you need to take a vacation. And she is one of these like, but I got to do this, but this is important. Most of the employees that work for us, or all the employees that work for us, for them, it's a passion project. I mean, they're obviously paid. And we try to pay everyone a living wage, but they are doing it because um, they're they love their work. So you have to love it because it's very emotional. It's not like if you love an animal and the animal passes, it's going to be a really emotional day.
Right.
It's hard. I mean, it's not like working at, I don't know, a tech startup or something like that. I mean,
Right.
so,
Good.
you have to take care of yourself also. And luckily, we have a very supportive community. That's one of the things that we've been able to build here is a community of volunteers, visitors, board, staff, and we all sort of support each other.
One of the things that we want to do here at Better Life for Animals in supporting sanctuaries is to put together a summit, which we're in the process of doing now, to help the leaders kind of share their best practices to try and help support other sanctuaries so that we can, all be successful at this, because it's such elevated work.
You're listening to Better Life for Animals podcast. Our mission is to amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. First of all, go ahead and subscribe to this channel wherever you're watching or listening. And then get involved by visiting betterlifeforanimals.com. That's betterlifeforanimals.com. Be sure to check out our blog, learn more about incredible sanctuaries, and explore our book section, where 100% of net proceeds from book sales are donated to sanctuaries. Every action you take helps to make a difference. And remember, subscribe to this channel. And now, back to the show.
For those of you who just joined us, we are speaking with Miyoko Schinner, and this is Better Life for Animals. Miyoko, let's talk about travel. What does travel do? How does it, I know you focus on animal protection and humane food. Do you have a sense of does it have a global connection to the community? Do you feel like you make the world a little smaller when you travel around?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yes, we do make the world a little smaller, and we have to get out of this country. Otherwise, I think Americans tend to think that we are the center of the universe, the center of the world, and everyone should adopt our practices. And we have actually had great influence over how the rest of the world functions in so many different ways. But we fail to sometimes see that some of our practices aren't the greatest. And we could be actually harming other parts of the world. So for the last 10 years or so, I started leading these sort of culinary tours. Predominantly, I was going to Italy once or twice a year. And it started out as just sort of eco travel, vegan culinary eco travel. And then it transitioned to actual cooking classes in Italy. And then I added Japan to my repertoire. I work with different travel agencies in those parts of the world. And next year, I'm also going to Tanzania and India. And all of these trips have a very culinary, vegan food systems angle to it. So we're not just going to the typical sites, the tourist sites, and then throwing in a few vegan restaurants here. Um, what we're doing is we're really going deep into food systems because something that we have to realize is that most countries had a predominantly plant-based diet until fairly recently. And so what we want to do is explore those diets. Italy, I'll start with Italy, had a tradition really until, I would say the 1970s or 80s. Most of the country was very, very poor, and they ate something called la cucina povera, which means peasant food, the poor man's food. And it was predominantly, yeah, it wasn't completely free of animal products, but it was predominantly legumes and vegetables and grains. Um, and so when you go to Italy and you explore what people ate really, until fairly recently, they might have eaten meat and cheese once or twice a month. That was it. You talk to any nonna, any grandma, and they'll recall their parents, and they'll say, yeah, they were lucky if they got meat once a month. But that was Italy, and there was a beautiful cuisine that came out of it. Same thing in Japan. Japan was a vegan country for 1,200 years until the mid 19th century, until the Meiji Restoration by royal decree because it was a Buddhist country. A lot of people don't know that. So there is a rich history of plant-based food in Japan. Right now, it's mostly relegated to temple food. That's how it's often known. But historically, that was the everyday man, every man's, every woman's food. It's the same thing in Africa and Tanzania. Obviously, it's the same in India. And so what we do on these trips is we explore these food systems. We go to farms. We go to small producers. Like we'll be visiting a soy sauce producer, miso producer, a wasabi farm in Japan. In Tanzania, we'll be visiting local farms, talking to small local women's businesses. Of course, we'll be going on a safari as well too. We'll be going to Zanzibar and visiting the spice market and really understanding, how did people in Africa eat until, the West sort of came along and had its dark touch to it. And same thing in India. We're going to be going into a deep dive in food systems there as well too. So that's how these trips are a little bit different. They're not just, let's go to the top tourist sites, Taj Mahal, and go to a vegan restaurant and call it a day. But it's really like, let's really understand um, what food systems are behind the scenes.
I love how you talk about food systems and how I think, as you're right, as Americans, we think that we rule the world and that our diet is the diet, and that seems to be doubling down in this political climate. I I like to travel as well. I've been to Japan, I've been to Africa, and I was oftentimes the only vegan on the trip, and they always accommodated me. But it's very important for the world to understand that this is not how you do not have to have meat or cheese on your plate, any meal, let alone every meal. I think that America is, I've heard you talk about this too. It's like it's facing a loneliness epidemic. You know, in your view, how does this isolation, because I know you go on a trip and you're in community and you're all, working together, and then you come home, or I come home and it's just me and my big house, and I have
Yeah,
to
no,
work. I have to work to make connections again,
all of us in our big houses feeling
Yeah.
all alone in the United
Yeah.
States. And it really, really is true. We have not valued community in this country. And that's why, the past Surgeon General, I don't know who the Surgeon General is anymore, but under the Biden administration declared that we had a loneliness epidemic, and something like over 50% of Americans actually say that they're lonely.
Mhm.
And it's a serious, serious problem because that is not how humanity evolved. Society didn't evolve as lone individuals. We evolved as families, as tribes, as communities. until, we decided in America that, we needed to have the nuclear family idea. And unfortunately, that tore apart families. And, I remember when I was so I grew up in Japan, but my mother is Japanese, my father was American. I remember when I turned 18, he's like, "Okay, you're on your own now. You're 18 out of the house." And I remember, you know, I mean, that's just not how it is in Japan. It's not that way in Italy either. I mean, in most parts of the world, you live in your house until you get married. You stay with your parents, and that in the United States, that was frowned upon. That's like, what's wrong with you? You can't survive on your own. You gotta. But what is wrong with being with family? There's nothing more beautiful than that. And we have devalued that, and and because of that, we've gotten to a point where we're lonely. I will say on the trips, one of the things that I am most proud of is not just introducing people to food systems, but in creating a sense of community. Because most of the people on the trips, um, most are vegan. Occasionally we get somebody who's not, but they quickly learn to become vegan, believe it or not. And the communities stay in touch long afterwards. They become friends for the most part. We have these WhatsApp groups from every single tour where people stay in touch, communicate, have reunions, get together. I was just up in Seattle and got together with actually two people there, and then a couple more people in Portland. Um, for the our 10th anniversary gala on November 15th here. I have three of my students flying here from across the country to help me prepare for it,
That's
uh,
lovely.
because it's also an opportunity for them to see each other. And so it really is a very, people are looking for others to connect with. And when you provide an opportunity for like-minded people to connect, not everyone, but a lot of them are going to end up becoming really good friends and staying in touch, even if it's over a long distance. Obviously, we need to create opportunities for people to connect in person. We have that less and less, as we avail ourselves to these devices, and think that, the question we have to ask is, where is life really happening? Is it on our device or is it around us? And if it's on our device, then that's a real problem. Um, and we really need to start working to create community. So I am encouraging people to start hosting cooking parties. I know it sounds strange, but if you like a book club, have a cooking club. Start inviting your neighbors, even if they're not vegan, to try out a recipe that you cook together, or just start inviting your neighbors. I just had some ladies that I don't know very well from my neighborhood come for lunch a couple of weeks ago. And of course, everything I serve is vegan, and everyone was delighted in the food. Um, and we need to start actively creating community, because otherwise we're going to end up feeling very, very alone.
I appreciate that if Miyoko wanted to throw a cooking party where she was doing the cooking, that everyone would come and be absolutely overjoyed with the results. I also, as an aspiring cook, have done similar things. I've had friends, I've even hired a chef during COVID who has taught me vegan cooking, and we tried all this vegan samples. And I do cook vegan when my friends come over. And I have to tell you, as a non-chef, I feel a tremendous amount of pressure to get it right. Because
Well, so that's why instead of making lunch for people or dinner for people, you invite people and you make dinner together. That
okay,
becomes the party. You cook together. So, and you let them know, hey, I'd love to invite you over for dinner, but here's the thing, we're gonna cook together. You have them come a little earlier and you provide the recipes, maybe even a video that you can watch while you cook along. And everyone, somebody chops onions, somebody peels the carrots. I mean, you have different roles, and you discover the cooking together. You laugh as you make mistakes. You go, oh, I overcooked this. Oh, it's fine. It'll still turn out. And then you eat together. Maybe you have a glass of wine if you drink while you're cooking. And then when you sit down to eat, it's so much more enjoyable. And if it's not perfect, you laugh about it. It's still fun. And then you don't need to be intimidated. So I'm actually going to be encouraging. I've got a project to launch cooking clubs across the country.
I love that idea. I'm in. Well, speaking of cooking, I'm in receipt of The Vegan Creamery. Congratulations. This is a beautiful book.
Thank you.
And I love the idea. I've been through it. I've picked out some recipes that I want to try. I know I can do, for example, very much excited about the rum raisin eggnog ice cream.
Oh,
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm
well,
going to be trying
listen,
that.
rum raisin was my favorite ice cream from Baskin Robbins when I was a kid. So
Okay. Yeah, I can
no one
remember
eats
that.
it anymore. Like it's not even
Yeah,
on,
it
you know. Yeah.
sounds fantastic. And I'm going to try. I think I'm going to start simple and start off with maybe like the creamy almond oat milk. And but I love the idea of us learning what's in our cheeses. They're just filled with mostly crap, right? And to be able to make it yourself without it being daunting, because as once again, as a aspiring chef, it feels a little daunting, but I think as I look through it, there's many recipes I can start with. I'm going to get some watermelon seeds, but it's a beautiful book.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think starting with the milks
Okay.
is a good idea because they're
Okay.
easy. They're very, very easy. If the cheeses are mostly fermented, so if you want to start with fermentation, maybe one of the yogurts might be a good one
Okay.
because yogurt is less challenging than cheese. Um, and there's some interesting yogurts. There's yogurts that have legumes in them, like chickpeas or mung beans. So you might want to start with one of those. Ice cream also is relatively easy, especially if you have an ice cream maker.
I do.
And yeah, one of the differences in from a lot of vegan ice creams is that there's no oil in any of the ice creams, and there's no coconut milk either. I know a lot of non-vegans say they don't like vegan ice cream because it tastes too much like coconut. They're like, oh, the coconut milk is just so overpowering, and um,
I've
so
heard that as well. Yeah.
yeah,
So I
and so
appreciated that all your recipes had different ingredients in them.
yes, yeah.
Coconut is a very distinct taste.
And I love coconut
Yeah,
milk,
I
but
do
I don't
too.
want all my ice cream tasting like coconut milk either. So,
No.
yeah, so I decided to avoid that. And I came up with a couple of really easy ice cream bases that you can use for different flavors. And there's no oil in them either. Um, it, so one of them is a mixture of cashews and cooked rice. I know that sounds odd, but when you puree the cooked rice with the cashews, it creates this sort of uh, gl glutinous. It creates sort of a creamy mouthfeel, believe it or not, that instead of oil.
Hmm. Yeah,
And it
I
helped,
could
yeah.
see that.
So, yeah, anyway, I just tried to make things as whole foods and as healthy as possible with and minimize things like oil and starch where I could. I couldn't completely eliminate them in every recipe, but wherever I could, I did, which is, I think, the bulk of them.
Well, I'm very excited to give it a try, and I have so enjoyed having you on my show today. Is there anything that you would like to share before we have to say goodbye?
If you'd like to learn more about my work or my travels or my books, check me out at miyokoschinner.com, MIYOKOSCHINNER.com. And to learn more about Rancho Compasión, go to ranchocompasion.org. That's Compasión is spelled like compassion, but only one S.
Very good. Miyoko, thank you so much. This has been Miyoko Schinner at Better Life for Animals. And for those of you who have enjoyed our conversation today, please like and subscribe so that we can all create a better life for animals.
Thank you for joining us on the Better Life for Animals podcast. Together, we can create a world where all beings are treated with dignity, respect, and care. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. It helps us reach more people and spread awareness about the incredible work happening in animal sanctuaries. You can also share this episode with friends and fellow advocates to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep speaking up, taking action, and making a difference for the animals.